your journey.
We always roll into it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it's Valentine's Day coming up, so I don't know. We can talk about love. We can talk relationships.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that.
Right?
What is up, world?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Everyday Riches Show. I'm one of your hosts, Barbara Ellison, transformational life trainer. You know what? One of the things that I have really realized is that I want people, but we always talk about who do we want to talk to? Well, I want to talk to baby boomers who want to live happy, healthy, financially free, abundant lives. And so, but Barbara, you have to start putting it out there. So that's my thing for my New Year's intention of getting it out there, because that's who I am. I am a baby boomer. And it's like, well, why aren't you talking to your own crowd? So that's why. So let's talk New Year's resolutions for.
Because I heard word of the street people in other generations are just so cool.
Because what generation are you, Jason?
I'm Gen X. I'm
X.
that really small period of time, in between the millennials and the boomers.
Me too.
Yeah. See, the Gen Xers rock.
Yeah. And so, but all of us want the same things.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Yeah.
The issues that I would be dealing with as a more senior person is different than what you guys are. So but anyway, so that's one of my New Year's. So this is our first show of the new year.
Mm.
Oh no, it's not. It's the second. Oh, I've lost track. I'm a senior. Lost track. But one of the intentions that I've had for this year is to get really more intentional about the issues of that baby boomers are facing.
Yeah.
That so many of them are not prepared for retirement and not prepared for losing and wanting a new relationship, which is kind of where Jeanell comes in, because that's where I'm at. I lost David 11 years ago, and now it's like, you know what? I'd really like to meet somebody. So, anyways, but Jeanell and I have known each other. Oh yeah, it's been a while. We've talked several times.
Yeah, so I was looking through my email trying to get in contact with you, and I found, funny enough, you and I met exactly a year ago.
Oh,
it was messing me up because I'm like, what? Then I looked at the date, like 2022, but it's a January, I think it said 17 or something.
That was just
the weirdest thing. So just so you know,
it's a year ago
that's
today.
Amazing how that happens.
It's a year ago we met.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's how when Jason and I met, it was like, oh wow. And now we've had this show a year and a half.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's been cruising. It's pretty crazy. So we've known each other for coming up upon 2 years.
Yeah.
We probably met in like February, I want to say.
February or something. Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to say you were on my podcast in like February-ish, March maybe.
Yeah. Jason has a great podcast. That's kudos to Jason. Yeah.
Thanks.
I love so, and he's gotten high tech. He has his own little production thing in the whole 9 yards.
Oh my God, it makes life so easy. So yesterday, just kind of everyday riches, right? And this is an everyday riches moment. So I'll share this really quickly. My guest that I had been planning to have on for 3 weeks, my calendar invite I went out to the wrong email address. It went out to a Zoom link apparently that she had sent me at one time or another, and so she didn't get the email or didn't get the calendar invite, and she booked herself on something else, and so I didn't have a guest, and so I was scrambling around yesterday trying to find a guest, and everybody was busy, or there's so many people out of town, and so I reached out to about 6 or 7 people that were on my short list of like somebody that could get in the studio to do this podcast, and everybody was busy. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna have to do this podcast by myself. And so last week was a horrible week. My dog died on Monday, and so just the whole week was navigating through this grief. And then on Wednesday, so Thursday, I found out that a good friend of mine that I played basketball with for 11 years, died, 61 years old, was literally planning to play basketball with us on Tuesday. in Tuesday afternoon, had heart complications, had to have multiple surgeries, and ended up passing away. And this guy, as a 61 years old, and we talk about seniors, this is a guy that every week I'd find myself saying, I want to be him. I want to be Tim. This guy comes and runs his face off. I haven't seen him slow down. He seems like he's in great shape. And just how fragile life is just gone, and just a couple other things happened in just a tough week. So I just went and I started talking and did a whole episode on going through grief as an entrepreneur, because I'm going through grief this whole, and still right now I'm like, my eyes are red because I'm literally talking to the receptionist here, the admin assistant here at the office, she asked me about my dog, and we're talking, and I'm like, it's like, she's literally like, it was like losing a child, like it's literally like
it's family member.
Yeah, it's like, so even right now I come down the stairs in the morning and I want to let her outside, it's just this natural. Anyways, the long story short of it is I did this podcast, an episode, and it's one of those things, especially doing one by myself. I hate doing episodes by myself. I've only done 2 ever. Yesterday was my second one I've ever done by myself. But did this 40-minute episode about grieving and how getting through it, navigating it. And also, do you get another pet again? Do you put yourself in a position to lose again, right? And the studio engineer had brought that up. He said that when he lost his dog, he hadn't got another one because that he remembered that grief. And so as the conversation really turned to being human and putting yourself in the arena, and that knowing that your spouse could die,
right? Mine did.
Knowing that none of us want to live through this, but your kid could pass away. Your parents are going to pass away. You're going to die at some point. Our animals are going to die. We're never going to safety wrap ourselves and bubble wrap ourselves. And as much as I'm grieving through this, all of it is great times. I'm sad and I'm crying because I'm remembering all the amazing times. And if I didn't lose, I would have never have had that. Right. And that's the only reason I'm grieving. Like, honestly, for her, my dog, she was getting to the end of her life, and even though she was 12, she'd been battling these bladder stones for the last 4 years, and we'd watched over the past few months as she had really slowed down. So I know she's not in pain and all that kind of thing and all those comforting things, right? But I miss all those memories. I would not do it again, though. So anyways, I do this episode. I'm getting long-winded here, so I apologize. I do this episode, and at the end, the studio engineer comes in and he closes the door and he just sobs in my arms, so you do these podcasts and we talk every week about the one person that hears it. And typically when we do these episodes, we don't get to see the one. Yesterday, it's really cool because I got to see the one. And I got to hold him and comfort him through some things that he's going through. And it was just a really cool experience. So everything happens for a reason. Those are the everyday riches, right? Everything. I was really like, it sucked yesterday trying to figure it out. But everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's a really great lead in into what we're talking about today, right? We're talking about love and marriage. And, as someone who's been married for 17 years, and like Barb, I found my man, I found my person, and the more that I love this person every day, the more I am very present that each day we're together, that's one less day we're going to be together. It's like this, I'm like in this countdown mode. And I really try to get myself out of it, because then I go into this kind of feeling of fear. Like, oh my God, what is my life going to be without this man? Or what's his life going to be without me if I go first? But I also think that there's such a gift in that, right? If we lived forever, we wouldn't care. We wouldn't take these small moments and
Yes.
they didn't matter so much. But because we know, I'm doing the math. I'm like, okay, at best, I probably have another 40, 50 years with this man at best. So how can I make every moment count? And as an entrepreneur, I find sometimes I get lost in my work. I get really distracted. And here's my husband going, hi, hello, I love you, come see me. And I'm like, okay, baby, just give me another hour, give me another hour. Same thing with my dog. My dog's sitting here waiting for me to finish work, right? And I'm going, she's 6. She just turned 6. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I've got maybe another 6, 8 years with her. But it's easy to take things for granted until you're lost. And when I lost my dog before Ellie, I went through the exact same thing that you went through, Jason. Mine happened 2 days before my birthday and a week before Christmas. So it was like extra hard. And really the lesson I got, we're talking about everyday riches. What I realized that animals give us is this experience of unconditional love. And that's the part that was so present for me, was like you said, driving into the driveway and going, oh yeah, she's going to be right there on the steps waiting for me. And then you open the door and she's not there. And so I feel like that's the same thing with marriage, right? Until we really stop to appreciate what we have, we won't really get just like how beautiful those small details, right? At the end of our life, we don't think about the big things that happen. We think about those little moments,
right?
Of just sitting on the couch, right? Just touching them, rubbing their belly, just the way they look at you, and I'm talking about the animal, not the husband right now, but
but same thing, right? Yeah.
But sometimes it's the same thing. I love that movie, How to Train a Husband. It was like, there's a cute movie about training a husband. And it was just the funniest movie, that she was training her husband, but like she was training her dog. And it was like, and then he found the book. And it was just this, well, you're treating me like a dog. He said, but you know what? I realized I'm happy so you can continue. Yeah. Well, you saw a tripod on my lap, and she comes up and kisses my neck. know? Yeah.
Tripod as a guest host for sure.
Tripod. Mind you, the first time she knocked down my green screen. Now I don't try to keep her out. So she's sitting here on my lap and she's purring, and so, but it's absolutely the truth. But then after a while, you do get ready for the next one. Like David's been gone 11 years now. And now I'm thinking, gee, you know what? I'd like to have the lying on the couch and rubbing my tummy.
Right.
In the eyes, right? The eyes looking at you.
Yeah. And that look, right? That that look of adoration.
Right. Exactly. With that, we talked about before in the pre-show, we talked about, it's coming up to Valentine's Day, and one of the things that David and I did, we had like 10 or probably at least 10 cards that of like these mushy Valentine, because when you're dating, you get the mushy Valentine's cards. Well, we got to the point where we just exchanged them every year.
Oh, cute.
So 1 year I would give them all to him, and the next year, and we dated them all.
That's
and
cute.
one little comment about how much we loved each other. And it was just the funnest thing. And that's one of the things that I miss. But you know what? And yet it brings back a fond memory. Yeah. So I think that's what, when the initial stages of grief go away, then you start to remember the fun little, oh brother, I can't believe David did that, kind of thing, and it made me laugh. So, yeah. But still, doesn't make it at the time. It still hurts.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about love for a second, because, when we're talking about love and loss, this is the thing about love, right? Is that love does take risk. And I think, as a marriage coach, this is what I deal with, is that people want love and joy and trust and all of those ooey gooey things. But it takes work, and it takes putting your heart at risk. And even though for me, I feel like if you ask me, Jeanell, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you put your marriage at? I would say 1 million. There is still a part of me that when I am vulnerable, I am a little bit scared. Even though I know I'm safe and he's going to hear me and he's going to support and love me, there's always this part of me, probably from my childhood, some of my childhood wounds, that is like, will I be accepted? Will I be loved? Will I be judged? And so when we've had some, a little bit of friction in our relationship, and we start to lose that feeling of trust and security, we sometimes stop putting ourselves at risk. And then we live in our head, we start making up stories, we start feeling guilt and shame. And then all of a sudden, of course, our partner starts to feel that energy and they're like, okay, something's going on over there. So now they pull back. And now you've got two people just continuing to pull back because they're unwilling to say what's there, which is, honey, I'm scared. And I need you to just tell me that everything's going to be okay. Everyone's trying to be so strong and,
Right.
and what really is required, I think, to have a really amazing, juicy marriage with great sex and great, like all of that stuff, is that vulnerability, that best, that best friend feeling that's like, hey, I know I'm messed up. I know I'm flawed. And I just need you to be here for me and love me, even when I'm all like falling apart. And for me, I feel like that's really what my husband gives me, is this feeling of, listen, come as you are. I got you. Whatever you're dealing with, I'm going to love you through that anyway. And it's such a gift. It's such a gift every day. And when I have it every day, sometimes I forget how amazing it is until I get into a session with a client and they're telling me all the opposite. And I get out of my office, I see my husband. I'm like, I love you so much.
That's so awesome.
Right? Thank you for showing up every single day. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for trusting me with your heart. And I don't take that lightly. Like the fact that he gives me into his heart and says, here it is. You can do whatever you want. If you want to crush it, you can do that too. That fact that he trusts me that much is such an honor. And I take great care and thoughtfulness in that gentle heart. Because my husband has a very soft, sweet, kind heart. And people like that can be crushed very easily. Right. Because they love so much. And so I understand that. And so I think if there are any couples out here listening to this podcast, you got to remember that even though our partner may seem cold or uncaring or checked out, it doesn't mean that they're not hurting. It doesn't mean that they are not dealing with their own self-image, self-confidence, self-worth issues. We're all dealing with it. Just some of us hide it better than others. And we have to have compassion for each other. But really, the compassion starts with us, right?
Exactly.
The compassion, the forgiveness, all of that starts with us, because we cannot give to another what we don't understand for ourselves. So a lot of times I'll deal with couples that are like dealing with infidelity. And, oftentimes it's the man, often, but not always. And she'll say to me, how can I forgive him? And my first question is always, what is it that you need to forgive yourself for?
Right.
Because until you can do that, you cannot offer that to another.
Right.
And so that's why the work starts here. The work isn't out there with your partner. You're not trying to change your partner. You really got to look inwards.
Right. Like I know when my first husband and I, we divorced. And when I was getting married to David, who was, the love of my life. And yet I looked back and I had to look back and go, okay, what was my part in the breakup of the first marriage that I don't want to happen in my second marriage? Because I'm not going to do this again, little knowing at the time that I would be a widow. However, that was a big, big learning curve for me. That, all right, Barbara, what part did you play? I mean, because it takes two to do any relationship. I don't care whether it's a podcast relationship or a marriage or a business partnership or whatever. There's two sides of it.
Yeah.
And I really struggled but it was like, Barbara. But he did. But Barbara, what part of it was you?
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it? To point the finger.
Hard.
Because when you get to point, because when you point it outwards, you don't have to do anything. You can just judge and sit back and just point the finger. It's like watching a hockey game, right? You can just judge, but when you're on the ice playing the game, totally different conversation, right? It's so easy to judge, but when you're in the game, I think Barb, I don't know if you and I talked about this, but for me, I also had a first marriage and that also went down the shithole.
I think we did.
Yeah. And what woke me up was doing Landmark and
Yes.
realizing like, wow, I had all these expectations that clearly he could not meet, which is okay. But I judged him for not wanting the same things that I wanted. And listen, that was my responsibility to get really clear about that before we got married. And that's not what I did, or that's not what we did. And so I need to take responsibility for that. And so up until that moment, I was like, he's a jerk. He doesn't care, right? He doesn't, I felt duped. I felt like the product he was selling me was not what I got.
Yeah. Buyer's remorse.
Yeah, buyer's remorse. It was like the day after we got home from our honeymoon. It was like this mask came off and it was like a completely different human being. But to my point is like, I really had to say, you know what? I am so sorry. I've been judging you. I've been blaming you. I've made you the bad guy when really, I'm just as responsible for the condition of this relationship. And you know what? You're great how you are. It just is not what I want.
Exactly. And that's what Alan, my first husband, we had to get to the point where it was like the only thing we had in common were the children. That was it. There was nothing else.
Yeah.
And just not enough to, and when we got to the 20-year mark, it was like, all right, this is just not, it wasn't fair to either one of us. And luckily, I mean, we had a really amicable divorce because we just realized that we just weren't the right partner for each other.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be dramatic, right?
Nothing against me. But I did have to take some of the responsibility because you know what? You get married when you leave. I think we get married when we least know what we want in a mate. And one day, the other day, I was talking to a gal that she's a marriage counselor. And I said, personally, I think it should be very easy to get divorced, but it should be extremely hard to get married. Because to do like the personality assessments that I do and the emotional intelligence assessments that I do, have all of those things in place. And how do you feel about money? Are you a spender? Or are you a saver? That money causes so many rifts in marriages that it's like, what do you mean? And over money and just all of these things.
In my experience, I get sex more than money. I don't get a lot of money stuff. I get a lot of sex. Yeah. Wow. Like I have a high sex drive and my partner has zero. So I'm thinking to myself, why would you marry someone if you have a high sex drive and this person's zero and this is something that's really, really important to you?
And why would you
figure that out first? But
right. And then this is the things that I think it should be harder to get married. Work on these things first, because those are the foundations. Yeah.
Yeah. They kind of have this like ready, fire, aim thing. Right.
Exactly. And it's hard. I mean, marriage is hard. Any relationship is hard. However, I think that if we can talk it out, that's one of the things like David and I, we could talk about things and to the point where then, okay, let's either compromise about this, or we are never, ever, ever going to talk about this again because we had fundamentally opposing views. We are never, and so when other people would bring up stuff, I'm really sorry that David and I, we would look at each other and go, okay, yeah, sorry, David and I don't talk about that. Because we just totally thought,
where it's gonna end.
We knew where it was gonna end. Right. And what was the point? It would just make us, we would be upset because he couldn't see my point and was nothing against him. And I couldn't see his point. How can you think like that? And he was like, what do you mean? How can I think like that? How can you think the way you do? Well, we were fundamentally different over that point.
Yeah. And that's okay.
And that was okay.
Totally
we never talked about it. So
it's okay to agree to disagree. Like I have no problem with that. And I think that's what people get stuck in is they want to be right. They really, really want to be right. And
when you put placement and value over your ego, your relationship is never going to succeed. And that's, I think, the biggest thing. And for, several years of my relationship that was bumping my head on the wall is placing my needs and my ego first, right? Or I think really our relationship journey, me and my wife, was both of us trying to figure it out. And it's like you had said, like, we get married when we don't know most what we want. And that, Jeanell, I think what you're communicating too is like, we really got to do the work on ourselves. Like,
Right.
somebody else can't make us happy unless we know what makes us happy, right? Like, or how can we make ourselves happy and not depend on somebody else to make ourselves happy? What triggers us? Like, there are things in our relationship that is causing us to get emotional or upset and argue that were triggers that, were experiences from my childhood or her childhood, or, relationships we had with our parents, and, all our past relationships, and all these triggers were happening. We had to work on and really unfold those. And then, there's just a whole deep dive in that, but it was a lot of personal work, to Jeanell's point.
Right.
Yeah. And it takes a level of maturity and honesty and humility to really like get to that point to go, you know what?
Right.
I'm tired of playing the blame game. Let's just sit and talk about it. But I think, one of the things I love to talk about in my podcasts and talks like that is how it's not our fault. It's not our fault that we suck at relationships or that we suck at communication. Like, think about how we were brought up. Think about our parents and what their parents taught them.
Yep.
Right.
And all these, and I think everything is a double-edged sword. The things that we think are our positive attributes also have a negative attribute. So for example, I just found out, Barb, I did the emotional intelligence thing. I just found out my number one is overachiever. And part of me is like, oh yeah, overachiever. That's really awesome. That's a great thing. But then there's also this double-edged sword to overachiever, which is like perfectionism and anxiety, right, and, your self-worth connected to your achievements, right? So I think it's really important for us to understand, how to communicate in a way that is distinct from what we were taught. So, what we were taught was to communicate, to react, justify, respond, defend, judge, right? Rather than listening and communicating to understand.
Yeah, to have empathy, to have empathy,
to connect.
Exactly. To explore the differences and what makes us different, and how can we take those differences and make it into something new and exciting.
Yeah, where both people feel honored and heard and valued, rather than this like domination game or control game where both people are saying, you need to listen to me, nobody's listening. And then we wonder why we get stuck in this loop, this vicious cycle of resentment and frustration, thinking that it's the other person's fault when you're right in it too.
Right, exactly. And that's like on a personal note for myself. I am so glad that I have spent these last years, because, Jason knows my story, and I know I've told you, is that, when after David died, I had no idea of who I was outside of all the labels that I had put on myself. Okay, who was Barbara? What does Barbara want? What makes me come alive? What do I like to do? Yeah. Well, I love doing podcasts. I love speaking, but that part of me was always squelched as a kid, because in my family, I was brought up in a very traditional family that nice girls don't do things like that. Nice girls don't build businesses. Nice girls are wives and mothers, and you take care of your home. Yeah. Well, okay, but that's not me. And now people have said to me, oh, Barb, you've changed so much. It's not that I've changed. I've just finally come into my own.
Yes.
I am. So now, of course, I am ready for the man who's going to come along, who is going to be the right man for me.
Yeah, who's going to run with you,
who's going to run with me,
not behind you, not in front of you, like right there holding your hand.
To be a partner with.
Yes.
And so I know that he's out there, that God has him out there for me, and it's like going to be perfect timing. And I've said this so many times that I feel that we're going to go from meeting to marriage, and we'll be married in 2 months. Because we're just going to know. Yeah. We're just going to know.
Yeah. It's so great you're talking about, that moment in your life. I had that when I turned 40, Barb. I think, I don't know if you and I talked about this, but Jason, I used to be in sales for 20 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I was coming up to 40, I'm like, this is, my first half of my life was great. I made lots of money. I climbed the corporate ladder. I got the free trips. And now I'm ready to do something that is me. That is
And meaningful.
Yeah. And how I prayed to God about this was, Lord, tell me what would be the greatest expression of my love. Because I know I got a lot of love to give, but I didn't know how I was going to express that. So that's what I prayed for, was like, tell me, what is the career that I need to be in that is so authentically me? Because I felt like I was good at it, but I was using like 5% of my brain. And it wasn't me, right?
Yeah.
It was me putting on this costume and uniform
Of being someone else.
of being someone else who people thought I should be.
Yeah.
So now it was like I felt naked, and I'd been wearing this costume called saleswoman for 20 years, that when I decided that that's no longer what I wanted, like you, Barb, I was like, oh crap.
Now what?
Who am I? Am I like a Starbucks barista? I'm like, I don't know who I am. And it was so scary. So scary. But it was my heart. It was about a year that my heart was like restless. Like I knew something was coming up. I knew I was about to turn another chapter in my life, but I really didn't know what that would look like. And then I happened to get headhunted by a really large sales company who offered me like $130,000 to move. I was like, yes, please. As soon as I got in there, I was like, no. This does not feel good to me. And I left after 8 months, but I left without having a plan B because I was that miserable and that sure that this was not where I was supposed to be. So I think it was God's way of kind of kicking me in the butt and going, you think you care about money? You think you care about being successful? No. What you really care about is having a life of meaning and something that is changing, making an impact in the world. So now my new mission that I've created is I want to impact 10 million lives before I die. And I know I'll never know if I hit that number or not, but it's the way that I show up in the world and is pulling me forward. So I'm not getting caught up in these little petty, challenges. I'm like, no. My mission is so much bigger than this.
Right.
And so for me, it's really about how do I impact generations to come? How do I work with couples who can potentially be the best role models for their children so that their children can go on to have great relationships and their children can go have great relationships. Right. So for me, knowing every single client that I help comes on the other end, not divorced, happier than ever, I know that now that I have just altered the future, their future in some small way. I shouldn't say we work together, we. But
you've impacted the circle of life. That's incredible.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like with me, when I ask so often, I'll ask my clients like, well, who are you within what you do? And they have no clue.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you don't know who you are with what you do is your tool, your job description, your title, whatever it is, but who are you within that? What makes you that you wake up every day and you want, like Jason loves what he does with his clients and getting them. He has absolutely phenomenal clients. I have phenomenal clients because they want to lead happy. I'm on a mission to make happiness the norm rather than the exception, because they want to live happy, healthy, financially free, abundant lives. If that's what you want, hey, I'm your girl. If you want to be by the status quo, okay, well, then go to somebody else. That's not what you're going to get from me. I want you to be happy. And if you're willing to do the work to find out who you are within what you do, then great. If you're, but some people, and it just amazes me sometimes that people are not.
Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't do that.
I heard this quote, Jason, you might have also heard this one too, but I love it. It's like, you don't necessarily get what you want, but you always get who you are.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I have not heard that. I love
No?
that.
Oh,
No.
it's so good because as an overachiever, I'm always
Yeah.
like reaching. But what I'm discovering is I get to discover parts about me that where I have still to develop as I go through these experiences and failures. And really, as an overachiever, learning that failure isn't a bad thing, which is very hard for me.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. You get who you are.
Yeah, you don't necessarily get what
Get
you
what you
want,
want.
but you always get who you are.
Yeah.
I love that.
Love
I'll have
that.
to put that in my quote thing. Yeah.
Well,
But
you just
and
think of how you respond to people. I was working with some young salespeople last week, and I was the way she went out and she got a credit for a customer, and then she sent an email back to the customer and said, "I went to my higher ups, and they decided to give you $100 credit or something." It was something like, but she said, "I went to my higher ups," and like took all the power away from her. Right. The way I'm viewing this interaction, I'm seeing her making this happen. She went and got the $100 credit for the client, right? If I'm a salesperson, I'm an account manager, I'm calling up my client saying, "Hey, great news. I went to bat for you. I went and got you $100 credit, got you all set up, or you'll see that on your account." Like, I'm taking ownership of that. I'm
right.
phrasing it. Hey, I went to bat. I got you set up, as opposed to I went to my higher ups. And like, you get who you are, right? You got to change who you are. You got to take that confidence and switch your perspective a little bit, and you get a different result in life. Just a little inch, right? Just a
The
little
tweaks.
I changed a couple of words in her email to show just a little bit of an impact. And if you just do that in all of your conversations, just a little bit of a tweak, and you take that ownership back as opposed to giving all your power away, how much do your interactions change?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to show you guys something. As you were talking, Jason, I thought about this. Can you see this?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know who that is?
Is that the Queen?
Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah. That's Queen Elizabeth and me when I was 6 years old.
Wow.
Whoa.
So the reason I bring this up is because when she passed away, I dug this up. It was in my storage, and I dug it up. And I started to share it on social media about how I met her. And basically, I'm a bit of a rebel. And basically, we were told to not pass the rope. And of course, my mom, I forced my mom to buy flowers for her on the way there. I'm 6. I'm like, yeah, she needs flowers. My mom's like, you're not going to talk to her. I'm like, no, Mom, but I need the flowers. So of course my mom buys the cheapest, like $2 bundle of daisies just to shut me up. Right. But we get there. And so it's finally time for her to cross. And I'm like, everybody's yelling for her, right? And I'm yelling too. And she smiles and she waves and she passes by us. And of course, she's got an entourage of like 30 people, right? Cops. And anyway, as soon as she passes me, I get really frustrated because I'm like, but I have these flowers. What am I going to do? What do? I go underneath and I run after her. And of course, everyone turns around and people start chasing me, trying to constrain me. And she turns around and she sees what's happening and she waves them off. And so everyone kind of lets me go. So she walks back to my spot and she says, "Are these for me?" And I said, "Yes, Your Highness." And I do this little curtsy because I was a dancer. So I did my curtsy. And that's when this photo was taken. And the reason
Let me see that photo again.
Let us see it again.
Oh my God, that is amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's my mom with the camera.
Amazing.
But, when I found this photo, I was like in this really weird mind space. And I was looking at this little girl and I'm like, man, she is committed. She's determined. She's unstoppable. She knew what she wanted. She went after it. And so I decided to actually keep it in my office to remind myself that that's really who I am underneath the fear and all the stuff that I'm dealing with as a new entrepreneur in the space that I'm in, a very sensitive industry. But I'm like, no, this is who I am. And if I can honor that and be that, what I want will just come into fruition from the energy that I bring.
Yes. Amen on that. That's a phenomenal story.
Thank
I am
you.
so glad whatever I said sparked that.
Yeah.
Thank
That
you.
is so cool. But Jeanell, I know you have a hard stop, and so I want to respect your time. So any last words?
How can you top
And how-
that, Jeanell?
Yeah. And how can people get in touch with you?
Well, yes. So I can be reached at JeanellGreene.com or at saveourmarriage.ca. So, I mostly work with couples who are, on the brink of divorce or just not really sure if they can make the marriage work, and they just really want to get some tools on how to communicate better and things like that. But I also do just general life coaching as well. So I help pretty much anyone who really wants to transform their life. Last note, let me just give me a minute here. Don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your family. Don't give up on life.
Yeah.
And just be open to being loved. I think so many of us, when we feel unworthy, we're not open to receiving. We can't even, when someone says, I love you, we can't even hear it. We can't even be with it because we don't even have it for
the
ourselves.
fullness of it, or accept the fullness of it. I think that's one of the things for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool beans.
Great message.
Jeanell, this
has
was
been awesome.
so great. But anyway, so for all of you, welcome to the Everyday Riches Show. And you know what? If you want a happier, healthier, financially free, abundant life, a little advert for myself here, somewhere on the page here, there's a little arrow that says Aging Gracefully. Click, check it out. And if you want more info, reach out to me. Or if you need help with your sales process, reach out to Jason. He's absolutely amazing. He gave me such tips on how to talk to people, because talking to people is the start of everything. You cannot go anywhere in life without talking to people. Like, one of my favorite sayings is you cannot do life on your own. So why not learn how to talk to the people around you? Whether those are business people or your spouse, your partner, your parents, whatever it is.
Communication, but communication is key. And
Is
and hearing that with you and your husband, Jeanell, like, and hearing your husband opening his heart and giving you his heart, like, that's so key, because often we protect and we seal ourselves up and we callous it up because to what you were talking about earlier, it's so vulnerable to open that up, right? But when you do, there's so much beauty and so much like fullness and so much life on the other side.
Yeah. Well, if we think about it, it's actually what we all want. Like, if we really are honest with ourselves, that's actually what we want. We're just so afraid to, first of all, admit it, especially us women. We're like, no, we're independent. It's like, no, we do want to be loved. We do want to feel vulnerable. Part of us does want to kind of feel like we're taken care of, at least
that we're the princess, that we want the princess.
Yeah, I'm a princess. I'm not gonna deny it, right?
Yep.
So,
well, everybody,
so awesome.
Thanks for listening. Send us some love, like, comment, share. If you like this, reach out to Jeanell. We would love to have you, and we will see you next week on the Everyday Riches. And remember, every day you can find the riches.